The Hornets lose their last home game of the season to the Grizzlies last night. The big story of the game was Jaylen Wells' injury. KJ Simpson involved. We'll get to that. Plus, Michael Malone fired, surprisingly so, by Denver. What does that mean for Charles Lee's tenure? What does that mean for NBA head coaches in general? We'll get to all of that today. Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast, and that does include YouTube. There's Doug Branson. Find him on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. You can also text him if you look for the text notes. In the show notes, you can see the text information there. Also listen to him on Locked On NBA with Matt Moore and Hayes, where Matt Moore is fresh off of his guest appearance on the Zach Lowe Show, the second ever guest on the Zach Lowe Show after Michael Malone got fired by Denver, again, with the big surprise. He said, not shocking, but surprising. Anyways, you got some stuff to talk about on Locked On NBA.
That's for sure. And I'll peel back the curtain a little bit. And if any of you are also fans of Locked On NBA, you may have wondered why we did not immediately go live on the news of the firing, because we had Matt Moore as our regular host. He is the host of Locked On Nuggets. Well, first we had to wait on the Locked On Nuggets live, and that makes sense. This is a local podcast network. You're going to defer to letting the host do the local show and then do the national show. But then after he gets done doing the local show, he gets the call for the Zach Lowe podcast, and he apologized to me and Hayes profusely for big timing us. But he was like, listen, I got to go. And I was like, hey, I totally understand, because I would have done it and not apologized. I would have been like, I'm going to the Zach Lowe show. Bye, Walker. Sorry, do the show on your own.
you would have had your shoes on and out the door by the time the call ended. It would have been.
I would have had my Zach Lowe Show hat somehow made, even though the merchandise already made. I made it in anticipation of going on the show someday. I would have had it on and been like, my bags are packed. See you, Walker. Good luck.
Yeah, you would have been Charles Lee at the podium with your Zach Lowe Show jacket that was just revealed to everybody, and you would have been looking like a total Zach Lowe tourist. Anyways, cool stuff from Matt Moore, who is one of the best at this. And so go check out the Zach Lowe Show appearance, Locked On NBA. Doug is hosting it. Even if he's not as big time as Matt Moore, Doug is still big time, and we appreciate him. I'm Walker Mehl. Listen to me, WFNZ. That was a Dr. Evil sip of coffee. Not yet. You looked right at me in the camera. This does feel like you're trying to big time me here soon. I'm Walker Mehl. Listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Hornets lose last night. They lose to the Grizzlies. It's the last home game of the season for them, 124-100. We can get to some of the stuff in this game that actually played out on the court, the basketball side of things. But clearly the big story was with 1 minute and 10 seconds left to go in the second quarter, Jaylen Wells, a really fun second-round rookie for the Grizzlies that's been awesome this year, he's out on a fast break opportunity against the Hornets. And then KJ Simpson comes rearing in from the backside of the camera, and he's trying to figure out a way to defend the play, and you don't see KJ Simpson come in until a split second. He's trying to find a way to defend it, and then it looks like at the last second he tries to bail, but he's already jumped in the air trying to figure out how to maybe block that shot. So midair makes the decision to try to go away from him. And then as he tries to go away from him, the momentum had already started, can't do anything about it, hits Jaylen Wells. Jaylen Wells in midair after a completed dunk, by the way. After he completes the dunk, falls to the ground and hits the front of his head. It's not one of these hit your back of your head things where you see it. Actually, when you see head injuries in basketball, it's usually kind of like that. But he gets hung on the rim a little bit, faces down towards the ground, hits his forehead, has a hurt jaw in the scenario. We can get through some of the injuries that he would suffer, but hit his head really, really hard facing the floor, and the game stopped. And it stopped for quite a long time. Medical officials were taking care of Jaylen Wells for, I don't know how many minutes, maybe 15, which is a real long time in broadcasting time, which is a real long time when just watching the game at home. Maybe you're in attendance at the Spectrum Center as well. It felt like 30, but then you kind of look at the clock and it's only 15 minutes has elapsed. It's still a really long time. So they stretcher him off the floor. They put him in an ambulance. The game has to pause even longer because the only way you can play a game in the NBA is if you have an ambulance on standby, and they did not have one at the arena, and so they had to get the ambulance. Once the ambulance originally left with Jaylen Wells to the hospital, they had to get it back anyways. So Jaylen Wells, he's okay. His dad tweeted out some of the updates on what his injuries were, but he's fine. He was talking. He had a really swollen face. He also broke his wrist in this one too, just to show you, like, trying to brace yourself from the fall. He actually broke his wrist, even if you had the scary stuff, with his head. So all of that I throw to you, Doug. Pretty scary scene last night. Something I've never seen before on a basketball floor, college or professional, not in this kind of sense, with this kind of delay. So scary scene.
Yeah, we're used to the ankle, the leg, those brutal injuries. Of course, Gordon Hayward comes to mind. Sean Livingston comes to mind. But when you're talking about head in basketball, when you're up really high and you're going really fast and you have no protection on your head, a lot of talk about head injuries in football. They've got helmets. It doesn't stop concussions, but they do have helmets. Your head is unprotected in basketball, and that they call it hardwood for a reason. It's hard when you hit it. And I think what was scariest about it is when he hit his head. That's the hardest I've ever heard, and I heard it and on the broadcast and seen a player's head hit the ground. And then they went to I was watching the Grizzlies broadcast because I'm here in Nashville, Tennessee, and they went to the close-up that was on the baseline, and his stomach, like his chest and back, were convulsing. Like probably because he had gotten the wind knocked out of him as well. But it was just a super scary scene, his face on the ground. And KJ immediately tried to go over because he knew. He was like, oh, I just messed up. And he went over, and of course, the Grizzlies, very rightfully so, were like, get out of here, man. You were the one that caused this. Get out of here. And luckily, everything was able to calm down, and they were able to put the focus fully onto Jaylen Wells. But let me just get a couple of things out of the way. This was not intentional by KJ Simpson. This was, and you did a good job of describing what happened. I think that Jaylen Wells, first of all, KJ Simpson went full blast to try to make up and make a play. And then Jaylen Wells, I think, slowed up a little bit, did a little bit of a speed change because he didn't see anyone around him, didn't expect anyone around him. And so he was pulling up for kind of just a little bit of an easy dunk. And that caused this little weirdness where I think KJ couldn't balance the speed and the spatial awareness and did try to bail on it and ended up getting up under Jaylen. And I think, obviously, KJ, you saw the look on his face when they would do the sideline cutaways. He was stunned. And when he got the flagrant 2 foul, you saw Josh Green accompanying him to the locker room. And I got a report from Schumann of the Sicko Brigade, who was in attendance, that LaMelo and Brandon Miller also joined him back in the locker room. Mad respect to those veterans, because when something like that happens, whether you're a veteran, but especially when you're a rookie, when something like that happens, when the thoughts going through your head are, I may have just ended that guy's career and maybe changed his life, like that mentally is going to be something that probably KJ is going to be dealing with for a little bit of time. And so I'm glad those veterans went there. Shows the solidity that this team has under Charles Lee. But yeah, man, just brutal to see that. And I feel for Jaylen, obviously. Big laceration. I saw a picture, big laceration on his face, broke the wrist. He's going to be out for a while. But my thoughts also with KJ, man, as he kind of just figures this out, because he's a rookie and he's trying to like play hard and he wants to go full bore. And these kinds of things happen when you do that.
And yet, so, his dad tweeted, Jaylen Wells' dad tweeted after getting an update from his son and said Jaylen is awake and alert, wanted to know the score, actually, when Jaylen, woke up or actually.
Gamer.
Yeah, that's right. Always a gamer when you ask about the score after a serious injury. Swollen wrist, face, jaw, and back pain. about to get X-ray and CT. That was last night. Actually, while the game was still going on, we got that tweet from his dad. We found out that he would have a broken wrist, too, of all of it, right? So you had another injury outside of all of the scary head stuff that happened with Jaylen. To your point about KJ Simpson, yeah, you can see him bail, right? We can do the going back and watch this thing, and you can see during the play, KJ, I'm watching it as we speak. I mean, he makes the decision way too late to bail on this thing. He jumped, and then as soon as he jumps, he's in midair, which you can't control anything after that, and then he tries to duck under Jaylen Wells, and what ends up happening is he undercuts Wells, and that's when Wells falls. I'm talking about real awkwardly too. So usually it's just the sheer force of a fall that you have with the ground that is real scary, but it's the awkward, your wrist gets caught up under you, so that's how you break it, and then you become front facing. So at the last second, he front faces the floor, and that's where you get the injury to the front of his head rather than the back of his head or the side of his head, which is what you're used to seeing on these transition plays where there's contact and then everybody loses their balance. But KJ bails way too late. But you're right. It's not intentional. And this is what frustrates me. And maybe it's more of a frustrating thing about social media is somebody has to have the blame. This is what we do. We need answers right now. We need answers with Jaylen Wells having gone through something extremely serious. I have anger. Who do I direct it towards? The dude that is responsible. And so now we're going to raise the level of this where we can't just say, man, that's really frustrating. I hate that KJ just bailed way too late. We have to say, what the hell is he doing? This is not a basketball play. Then insinuating it's intentional. And then it just keeps going, right? The story gets bigger and bigger. And then we just keep adding on and adding on and adding on.
But smart people didn't do that. And that's the thing. You're always going to have that. People will forget. They won't remember KJ Simpson as being a part of this play, I don't think. And what our job, I think, is to say, KJ, there's no evidence this season, and we've seen a good bit of KJ Simpson because of all of the injuries at point guard. There's been no evidence that he's been that kind of player. I don't remember that in the scouting of him when he was selected in the second round. No one was saying he was a Grayson Allen type that was known for being a little bit too physical or doing things that were outside the realm of just your normal rhythm and flow. To me, this is a full case of inexperience. When you're playing second-round players, rookies, when you're playing G League guys against a veteran team that needs to win, there's a certain flow of a game that I think veterans and serious teams are used to. And I think when you insert these guys who are fighting for their careers, their livelihoods, their position, and they don't necessarily have the requisite experience to back up that desire, this is the kind of thing that happens. One of the sneak reasons to get rid of tanking in the NBA is so that you don't have these kinds of incidents where you have inexperience versus experience, and you have all of these sort of clashing motivations. And this is why serious basketball is actually better for the NBA, because it can prevent these and other types of injuries that come from players that aren't necessarily used to playing these types of games.
Yeah, the smart people might have understood, and nobody dumb was saying that, or nobody smart was saying that this was intentional. Yet it's I don't know if it's our responsibility, but I like to think of it as my responsibility to just make sure what the smart people are saying and what the dumb people are saying. What the dumb people are telling you, there's a few of them. They're like some decent size accounts, I would say, that were looking at KJ and insinuating, hey, what the hell is going on?
It's not the size of the account that matters.
Well, just insinuating that KJ might have been up to no good, which is clearly not the case. I mean, you can see it even in the play. You could see him try to stop, but you can't because you already made the decision to leave your feet. And he also immediately goes to Jaylen because of the contact. And I don't know if he heard it. I don't know if he saw. I guess I wasn't looking at what KJ was looking at after the contact was made. But yeah, feel bad for KJ too. Clearly, Jaylen Wells, hopefully everything is okay for him. First and foremost, we got to make sure everything's all right. And then we can go to KJ and hope that everything's all right with him mentally, because I'm sure that was a lot for him to go through because it wasn't intentional. There was nothing about him that deserved that. And that's why you see some of the vets go back there, like you mentioned, Josh Green being the first one. And then you could see everybody trying to help him out. Miles Bridges also at the podium after the game said, we're just checking in on KJ because he's not that kind of player and wanted to make sure he was all good. Shout out to the vets on this one. The vets really showed up for their rook with the Hornets last night after this play. Okay, coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
maybe dabble in the actual basketball game just a little bit. And then we'll get to Denver firing their head coach, Michael Malone. Charles Lee had an interesting answer on just the nature of being a coach in this league and how it might not be for long. We'll talk about that coming up next. LOH. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Taking care of your mental health is just as important as taking care of your physical health. But traditional in-person therapy can be expensive, often ranging from $100 to $250 per session. That's where BetterHelp comes in. With online therapy, you get quality care at a price that makes sense, saving you time and money. Therapy isn't just for life's toughest moments. It can help with everyday stress, learning how to set boundaries, or developing positive coping skills. Having access to support when you need it can make a big difference. Your well-being is worth it. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, H-E-L-P, BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Any actual game thoughts before we get to Charles Lee, Michael Malone's firing, and the 124-100 loss they suffered to the Grizzlies last night?
It's amazing that they scored 100 points. Your leading scorer for this game was Miles Bridges at 14, followed by Tijon Salon at 13 and Josh Okogie at 12. Your game score leader for this game was Moussa Diabate, who was your fourth leading scorer at 10 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists. That's crazy. I don't know what that says, but he was the only one in double-digit game score, true shooting percentage of 83.3%. Mark Williams was your bottom of the game score in this one at 2.7.
Not a good game for Mark.
Yeah, 8 points. Look, this was always going to be a difficult game because Zach Edey is. So if I could think of a matchup that would be worse for Mark, I would have a tough job thinking of someone better than Zach Edey. Who is super physical and much bigger than Mark, makes Mark one of the few players I think in the NBA that can make Mark look small.
Yeah.
And Zach Edey was motivated in this game. He's been playing a lot better since Taylor Jenkins got fired in Memphis. And part of the reason I think he got fired is because he wasn't putting enough emphasis on Zach Edey and putting him enough pick and roll possessions. There's a little Locked On NBA influence on this show. So Zach Edey was playing well, continues to play well, 17 and 19 in this game. Mark, the thing that makes it bad is that Mark can't punish Zach Edey by pulling him out and shooting threes. That's how you get rid of Zach Edey, is if Zach Edey's dominating you on the offensive end, you have to then in turn be able to take him out offensively on your end, and Mark couldn't do that. And so, yeah, we're just going to have to burn the tape on this one.
Well, and Mark didn't do that, except for one time where the three is in and out, and it looked good, and it almost went down, except it dribbled out, and then we just bail on it. Nope, that's it. We got one shot, and then we're done. Nobody's playing for anything. This game is completely over. This game's done. Grizzlies are going to win. This game was over immediately. We have one 3-point shot from Mark Williams, and that's it. Like, they're starting to explore it at the very minimum level. Like, they're just, he takes a step back. That's 2 threes that have been so far down the hoop that it should have counted, and then it bounces back out. But it's also been 3-4 threes that he's attempted all year long. How about we just keep doing it? I think that's the question is, let's show an emphasis. Because, Doug, once KJ Simpson goes out of this game, you do not have a point guard anymore. No more point guard. No. So if you don't have LaMelo, you don't have a facilitator, you don't have anybody that is going to feed Mark the basketball. And then you texted last night, one of the few offensive possessions that looked like it might benefit Mark, given the spacing, just given where he was on the floor. He gets a terrible pass. There's some bad post passing in this game. There was a dribble. There was a bounce pass on the low post block that just rolled out to the 3-point line trying to feed it. So you know how you could fix some of that and the Zach Edey and the bad passing of it all? Bring Mark on out. Like, have him shoot 3-3-pointers, just 3. Just give me 2 more. Have him pick and pop a little bit more. I think you're right, Doug. Totally. That's how you take him out of the game. And Mark has shown you all the free throw shooting chops in the world. So we've got that taken care of. Keep bringing it out. Like, it's experimental time. We got 4 games left in the season of a mathematically eliminated postseason game that you're trying to lose for Cooper Flag. So anyways,
the other way you take him out Yeah, the other way you take him out is by getting him into foul trouble, and I think that was, if you just want to burn the tape on this one and you just want to say, look, this game was kind of meaningless, forget it, we just got to get Mark to the offseason, I totally understand that. But I think I would also understand if you were concerned that he couldn't get a single free throw attempt in this game. That it's not that just that Zach Edey, bullied his way to the rim every time he touched the basketball and just moved Mark out of the way. That's sort of expected with the physical differences. But I was surprised that he was unable to draw just one single foul and instead just continuously got blocked at the rim or just got a shot challenged to the point. I don't know that a lot of those shots at the rim were even all that close. So yeah, man, difficult night for Mark.
No, bad game for Mark. And offense was terrible. Like points per possession wise, it was absolutely atrocious. Miles Bridges played in this game, 14 points for him, but another not great shooting night. 4 of 13 for Miles, 2 of 6. That's probably it on the game. We could talk about Tijon getting to the foul line. Only made 4 of them, though. Did go 3 of 7. All of his field goal attempts were beyond the arc. So maybe you want to mention something about Tijon.
Just one thing on Tijon. I did see him get the ball in transition, and he started to go and saw the defender come over to him and maybe saw someone else starting to shade, and he jerks it back. He pulls it back, lets that guy fly by, resets himself, and then gets into the offense. It's such a small thing. But if you remember back to Summer League, when Tijon Salon just had nothing in his head except go, 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 I've got the ball, I've got to get it as quickly down the floor as possible, and it led to turnovers. And so there's just a small thing where you can look at and say, okay, something is starting to click, something is starting to change, the things that he's being told are getting through, and he's becoming a better player.
That's been happening too with Tijon. Yep. You've seen the fast break. There was a play where Mark Williams runs the floor with him, and he gets on his puts his PF Flyers on and gets down the floor with Tijon, and Tijon slows down and then hits Mark for an assist too. This was a few games ago. So yeah, Tijon starting to show you he's thinking a little bit. You want to do a mock draft here and then just save the whole next segment for some coaching talk, Doug? Are you prepared for an audible on this show?
Yeah, for sure. Let me run the draft simulator real quick. Beep, boop, boop, boop. Oh, boy. Charlotte falls as far as they can to number 7, down 4 spots. Philadelphia wins the lottery. Chicago moves up 9 spots. I swear, Chicago, this is breaking my heart. Chicago has moved up 9 or 10 slots, and like every time I sim this lottery. All right, Charlotte falls to 7. I'll go to Bleacher Report. Jonathan Wasserman has his latest report. He does it by team, so he has Charlotte still taking VJ Edgecombe with the 3rd overall selection. But in the 7th slot, he has my guy. I'm telling you, I'm falling. Every time I watch this guy play, I'm falling more and more in love with him. Okay. You know what? In fact, I'm just going to call it now. He's getting my first NBA draft rose. I give these out to players that I'm just not going to quit on. Famously, Scoot Henderson got one. Many players in the past have gotten my draft roses. Not a lot of them get picked by the Charlotte Hornets. That should tell you something. But Toronto Raptors select Trey Johnson, the shooting guard out of Texas. He is pure liquid gold on the offensive end of the floor. I think people are underrating his defense and his playmaking ability. Super competitive. He's 6'6", 190. If we're talking about getting a shooting guard with some size, if you really believe that Brandon Miller is a 3, I'd love him to play 2, but if you think he's a 3, then Trey Johnson is just going to immediately help the Hornets shoot the basketball better. And I think he's going to be one of these guys that's drafted 7 to 10 that actually pops.
Okay, Trey Johnson, that's your guy. So I would think based on just surface level evaluation, you've gone fully into the deep end for Trey Johnson, giving out a draft rose to him. Cooper Flagg doesn't even count. We can't give out a draft rose to somebody that has too many roses to speak of. So Flagg.
Dude, not getting a rose is not an indictment. It's just getting a rose means I have really zoned in on you in my tape analysis. Like I don't need to, I've watched enough Duke games to know that Cooper Flagg's good. It's just like Trey Johnson, man, if the Hornets fall, I don't want it. I don't know that taking Trey Johnson at 2 or 3 makes any sense in the world. Although I could see him easily rising into the top 5. In fact, I've seen him mocked as high as 5. I could see him jumping to 4. So I don't know if it makes sense to take him at 2 or 3. But if the Hornets fall back, and they could easily do that, I think Trey Johnson should be the pick.
Yeah, Dylan Harper is still someone that you would love to have on the team. Ace Bailey with the potential, and then VJ Edgecombe. I think once you get to that 4 spot, but also top 5 seems possible. So Trey Johnson, he's the guy today in this mock draft. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
Michael Malone fired from the Nuggets organization. Also, Calvin Booth, the GM, after a 3-year run in Denver. He's also fired. Nuggets cleaning house just a week's worth of time away from the postseason where Denver is trying to win another championship. They'll have to do so without the head coach they did it with last time and the GM they did it with last time. We'll talk about the local angle there coming up next. LOH. This episode is brought to you by Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you can now enjoy the VIP treatment, making a 3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3%, plus you also get 4% APY on your cash and non-retirement accounts. That's over 8 times the national savings average. The perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive your 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk, rate subject to change. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 a month for 1 year from first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to Robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times the national average. Savings account interest rate claim is based on data from the FDIC as of November 18th, 2024. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Okay, this was a surprising piece of information we got from Shams Charania just yesterday, that Michael Malone fired by Kroenke Sports and Entertainment, the ownership group of the Denver Nuggets. Stan Kroenke, of course, having owned the Rams and Denver. Now Josh Kroenke, I think, is the active member, the active decision maker.
He's the one.
There.
He's the one doing the talking.
Right.
Is he the one flashing the cash? Who knows? But he's the one doing the talk. He did like a big long interview with whatever Denver Nuggets calls their like in-house media. But yeah, he's the one doing the talking.
There you go. So again, this was the reason for the emergency pod that Zach Lowe hosted on his new show, The Zach Lowe Show, with Matt Moore, host of Locked On Denver, or Locked On Nuggets, excuse me, and helping out my guy, Doug Branson, on Locked On NBA. So this was surprising to everybody else. Calvin Booth, also, again, the GM for 3 years after Tim Connolly goes from Denver to Minnesota. Tim Connolly really, I mean, I don't know. This feels like 95% was responsible for that Nuggets roster. The big addition Calvin Booth made was trading for KCP. That was a big move for Calvin. But other than that, a lot of people looking at him with a side eye. And we also know it was pretty clear Malone and Booth did not get along. They had not gotten along for quite some time. And so instead of firing one, looks like Kroenke Sports and Entertainment just decided, to hell with it. We're just going to get rid of both of these guys and move on. And then your guy, Doug, Matt Moore, said on Twitter, "I'm surprised. I'm not shocked." He seemed to be the least surprised out of anybody, which he's more in the know than everyone. So what are your thoughts on some of this before we find the local angle?
You really have to look at this in totality and look at Mike Malone wanted to chase after another championship by going out and getting veterans, and Calvin Booth said, no, we're going to go young, and we're going to make this a sustainable, we've heard this word a lot around the Hornets organization, a sustainable thing that could be a winner for years to come. And the way you do that is by continuing to invest in youth and guys that are going to be good 3 or 4 years from now, and not that we have to figure out a way to move for other pieces later on down the line. And that's really the problem. When ownership doesn't take a side and say, we're going to back your vision, or, hey, here's a thought, find 2 guys who have the same vision, which I think is what the Hornets have done in finding Jeff Peterson and Charles Lee. These 2 have shown us nothing except they're on the same page about what's going to make the Hornets successful in the short term and the long term. And so that's good, if you can back it up with winning. And I think that's what we have to see in Charlotte. In Denver, they had already backed it up with winning, but the toxicity in the whole organization, I think, is what they couldn't get over. And so they said, hey, we've got David Adelman, who is going to be a hot commodity. We might as well just give him a shot now, see if he can give the team a shot in the arm going into the playoffs, keep Jokic happy, and then maybe we've got a chance of keeping him Maybe this gives us a better chance because we knew we were going to do this with Mike Malone. Let's just do it now. Let's see what we got in Adelman. And, I don't know if it was a wise decision for them necessarily, but I understand the thinking behind the decision. I don't think that's where the Hornets are at all, though.
Oh, no, that's what's beautiful about this. Look, I will say there was no throwing anybody into the fire. This happened at a pace it should. And that's what is real comforting with this Hornet squad. There's going to be change at some point, whether you're amazing or whether you're terrible for the next 2-3 years. There's always going to be change, and that's when things start to get a little dicey. So with Denver, they lose their guy in Tim Connolly, who is clearly very good at this. He actually gets Minnesota to a Western Conference Finals appearance with some of the decision-making that he had with that squad, with just a couple of years' time running things over there. And after setting the Denver Nuggets up for what felt like sustainability with Jokic and then Michael Porter Jr. and, of course, Jamal Murray, and so all the decisions they made. So just there's going to be change. And I think that's when we'll start to figure out if the Hornets can maneuver through that. But I hope they don't have to go through change for, a much longer time, because whether change can come through being terrible or being very good, being very terrible is the faster way to see that change. And I hope we don't see it within the next couple of years, because it means everything is going swimmingly.
Note to Hornets: this is how you clean house. You fire the coach, you fire the GM. It's not what the Hornets did. They moved the coach, the former coach Steve Clifford. They just moved him into the basement, made him watch film.
They're still there. They're not even there. Yeah, they're still in the organization right now.
We think Mitch Kupchak is floating around like a ghost, like a spirit, just haunting the hallways of Spectrum Center, saying we don't have any all-stars on this team. So that's how you clean house, number one. Number two, I don't think they're going to do that with Charles Lee. I think he's passed the test of young coach, learning on the job with young team. He did not lose the locker room. These guys are still trying. They're still fighting. And again, it helps when your general manager is giving you players that fit your whole idea of how you want to coach a basketball team. Now the challenge is you've got to give Charles Lee a fair amount of talent by which you could evaluate him on wins and losses. I think you had to evaluate him on character and Hornets DNA, and can you drive these ideas and keep these players playing in year one? I think that following years have to be more about wins and losses. It always comes down to that. And you get about 3 or 4 years, and I don't think Steve Clifford or James Borrego really were given a fair amount of talent to evaluate these guys. I hope this new ownership regime is able to do that. And the way you do that, you got to break out the checkbook. The last thing that I'll say is that, in this idea of like, should the Hornets eject Charles Lee and go out and get one of these opportunities to get a Taylor Jenkins who has playoff experience as a head coach and not just an assistant coach like Charles Lee, or Malone who has championship experience as a head coach. My thing is like, what's the incentive for any of these guys to come and coach in another small market and win a championship for that team? There's no thanks. Hey, we'll make you the coach for life. Look at Mike Budenholzer in Milwaukee getting the hug from Giannis, and then 2 seasons later, Mike turns around from the hug and gets a stab in the back.
Yeah,
like you get no thanks. You get no love for doing it in a small market. If you do it in New York and you do it in LA, well, unless you're Darvin Ham, I guess. I don't know. It's just tough to be an NBA head coach, I guess, is the lesson here.
The classic adage, right? It's you get hired to get fired. That's what happens when you're a coach. Unless you're Pop or Bill Belichick, and even Bill Belichick at some point, that adage was true for him. And so you either become a product of your environment or you become a victim of the environment that you create. And that's the problem for coaches in particular, is that once you have set the standard, you are responsible for the standard that had been set with all of your success. But if you don't stay at that level, then you get the axe. And it doesn't matter if this coach comes in and gets to reap the benefits of the environment you created. You didn't meet it for one season, then you might just get the axe because we don't got time to play anymore. To give you a preemptive answer to the question, hey, what about Jenkins or Malone just being an assistant coach with Charles Lee? Yeah, because that would be a ringing endorsement of Charles Lee as a head coach, to have these accomplished coaches on his bench forcing him to make these decisions. That's not going to happen. Just give Charles Lee time. Give him whatever he wants, because we already have the reputation in Charlotte for not doing that for these head coaches with the old regime. Let's just not do this musical chairs thing at coach anymore. Let's not call Steve Clifford out of his basement grinding draft film, say, hey, Third term, baby. It's starting. We're starting right now. Let's not do any of that. Let's just have
Give
Charles Lee
good
be the guy.
coach, good players. Watch good coach become great. Watch good players become great. This is
Thank you.
easy. It's expensive, but it's easy.
There you go. Doug Branson with the parting message. Doug Branson also on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com, hosting Locked On NBA. He's everywhere. He's doing a newsletter. He's also texting you if you want to find his text information in the show notes. There's a lot of stuff that he's involved with, and you can find him on Blue Sky at Doug Branson. I'm Walker Mehl. Listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.